so let's talk about season 2 of Beef, right? So I will confess something. I did not get the time to watch season 1 of Beef. I know that it was a great show, but I just, for whatever
Right.
reason, just didn't get the time to watch it. It was always on
Okay.
my to
Right.
watch list, and I think for me, subconsciously, I was just waiting for the second season to drop. Only to realize, hey,
Right.
it's an anthology show. Okay, wow. So yeah, I jumped into season 2. Just with the awareness that a lot of people gave the first season a lot of praise, right? So the show centers on, or I should say, this season centers on two couples, right? Josh and Lindsay, right? You know, Josh is played by the incomparable Oscar Isaac, and Lindsay is played by Carrie Mulligan, right? And then we have this younger couple now, Ashley and Austin. Ashley is played by Kaylee Spaney, right? And I was watching the face, though. I was trying to remember where I saw her last. And the last time I saw her was in a little film that I pretty much loved called Priscilla, right? You know, she played Priscilla Presley, you know, the wife, well, the once wife of, you know, Elvis Presley, right? And Austin, who is played by Charles Melton. And the last time I saw him was in a little movie that turned out to be one of the best films I saw in 2023 called May December, right? Josh is the general manager of this country club, right? Called, well, Monte Vista Point Country Club, right? And, you know, his wife is there. I know they're just basically running this place, right? So the person who actually owns the place is this South Korean, this elderly South Korean woman, right? And you learn early on that Josh was doing some embezzlement stuff, right? So that's basically he was just skimming, you know, money off the top and just forwarded it into this account that is under his late mother's name, right? While this is going on now, Lindsay is pretty much kind of frustrated with the marriage. She feels not so much stifled, but she just feels like, you know, she just has nothing to provide. You know, she feels, you know, left out. She feels bored, basically, right? So there's one night where, you know, they just have like this little, like, you know, they just have this very heated argument, right? And this result in that, well, this, let me just say, the early bits of a fight, right? But nobody is hurt, nobody gets harmed or whatever it is like that, right? So when it comes now to Ashley, right, you know, she starts off as this beverage cart attendant, right? Austin is a personal trainer, right? So they work together, they in love and whatnot, right? Ashley wants to start a family, but, you know, Austin, you know, he just wants to. I should also mention too, Austin, you know, is Korean American as well too, but he's more white Korean, right? Yeah, you know, they want to start up a family, but, you know, the main concern is money, right? And because they work in an environment where there's a lot of bougie people, let's be real, there's a lot of bougie people there. They feel like they should be paid more, but they feel like they are being undermined by Josh, right? So yeah, one night, you know, they show up because they want to talk to him about what's going on, and they stumble onto the argument that they take place, right? Now, Ashley pulls out her phone and she records this bit, right? And then afterwards, or I should say the next day, she actually attempts and succeeds at, believe it or not, blackmailing Josh and just basically saying, here's what, well, you was trying to beat on your wife, so you better give me what it is we want, you better give me more money and all that kind of stuff, you better give us health insurance and all that kind of stuff, or else we will leak this video out and you will be destroyed, right? So things get deeper and darker at this point here now, because when it comes to the owner of the place now, Chairwoman Park, right? That's what she's called, right? Her husband actually works in South Korea. He's a doctor.
Right.
He's more with not so much plastic surgery, but more like facial rejuvenation and stuff like that, right? And because he has
Right.
these muscle spasms that, you know, affects his hands, he ends up botching a job to the point that a patient is killed, right? Like literally on the bed, right? You know, so
Yeah.
Park now wants to cover it up, right? So she already done
Right.
paying people to shut them out, like people in South Korea to shut up, right, about it, right? Well, at least the people who work with Park's husband, right? So she comes up with a scheme and say, hey, it's what, you know, this guy Josh who, you know, doing this investment thing, I gonna pin this on him, right? So now
Right.
things get from bad to worse now because people more or less want to silence him and all that kind of stuff. So basically, yeah, you have this back and forth between Josh and Lindsay and Ashley and Osa as well too, right? And shenanigans ensue, right? So I will just speak as somebody who never watched the first season, right? I saw early reviews of people loving the season, right? For what it is. and other people finding it that, oh, it's not as good as the first one, or it's trying too
Right.
much, man, and all that kind of stuff, right? I could understand that. And I guess for me, if I saw the first season, I would have made that I would have come to that conclusion too. I would have said that the first one was better. I guess because it just zero in on two characters, right? But I do applaud this season for stretching things out, taking a bigger taking bigger swings basically, right? Not just giving us two people quarreling, but four people basically, right? Because it's not just two couples, but is both parties in both couples, yeah, just not agreeing to things, right? And because this was my introduction to the world of beef, right? I really thoroughly enjoyed the season, though. I think it works. I think the conceit of the show itself absolutely works, right? But what the show really is about, at least from what I gathered from the second season, right, is really about human nature. It's really about, yeah, transactions that are made between friends, between lovers and stuff like that, right? It's
Right.
either financial or emotional or physical, right? And sorry to say, it's very true to life. This is how we are. This is how we think, right? Let me just say relationships, for example, right? We don't just shack up with somebody who looks unattractive to us. It's like, no, she had to be attractive or he had to be attractive, all that kind of stuff, right? Because we want something from that person, but at the same time, we have to give something back to that person as well, too, right? But yeah, when that
Right.
transaction do be as normal or natural as it was, yeah, that relationship becomes strange, right? And then you have to kind of force yourself to keep transacting and whatnot, right? And yeah, it just sort of takes a toll on you, right? So that to me is the heart of the show. It's just like, what do I need to do to get you to give me what it is I want, right? And sorry, if I had to scheme my way, or if I had to pretend to be somebody I not, or if I had to put up a front, or if I had to lie to you to get what I want from you, that's what I'm gonna do, and that's what the show kind of perfectly, showcases as well, too, right? One thing I really have to admire the show for, right, is that it gives us some really insidious, very unlikable characters, but at the same time, you get why they are the way they are, Dred. And it's not just because society fucked them over. Well, that's part of it, right? But it's just because they were wronged in the past, right? So they have like insecurities that they thought they could deal with these transactions or through these relationships, and it just don't work out, right? It just blows up in their faces in a way they didn't expect, right? For one thing, performances. Everybody like crushed it, though, right? Especially like Oscar Isaac, though. I think like he really came through
Right.
with a great performance here, right? When it came to like Charles Melton, right? Who plays Austin. His character I wasn't really feeling at first because he just sort of came off like a douchebag, like, oh, like like a loser basically, right? But like I like the character arc that he showed, because to me he shows the most growth in this show, because yeah, that man start off as just very naive and just flat out dumb, to just be like, nah, man, like, this what you doing here, and specifically to his girlfriend, or fiance I should say, Ashley, like, is wrong, Dred, you know what I mean? And Ashley, who's played
Right.
by Kaylee Sweeney, right? There are moments where she got under my nerves, right? I'll talk about little character beats in a bit, right? To speed into true things, right? But yeah, even she like gave a great performance here, because yeah, she is just an emotionally fractured character, but she's someone who just does not know how to process emotions very well, right? And that leads to some moments where she just does some dumb things. And like at first, like you watch, like there's one particular moment that takes place. I'm not gonna say what episode it is, right? But it involves an argument that takes place in a car. That's all I'll say, right? And like the moment happens, you just watch the moment like, why would you do that, Trey? But then the more you think about it, it's like, no, it's because she just don't know how to process emotions. Like it process anger, process disappointment. That's why she reacts the way she does. And it's only when, Austin makes she out in the final episode, like, yeah, that makes sense. That really make a lot of sense, right? Now I will say there are a few moments, like character bits, right? Yeah, where it feels like the story is kind of forcing characters to do dumb shit. I just sort of do it. It's like, yeah, why would you do that, right? Now I know it's an attempt at humor, right? Because yeah, this is pretty much a dark comedy drama. That's what it is, right? But yeah, there are some moments, some character moments where it's like, no, this is not funny, or it's meant to be funny, but this sort of comes off really awkward, But maybe that is the point, maybe that's the intention, but at times it's just kind of border on cringe, right? But that being said, though, it adds a lot of detail to who these characters are, right? But and I just love just basically just the contrast between the two couples, right? Why they bicker at each other, why they will work together, why they will scheme to get things done, right? What I didn't expect too was the main villain, main chairwoman Park, right? And what she does, right? And she really does come off as a villain, like a serious villain, because the two couples is just like, yeah, we doing all this embezzlement shit, and we blackmailing, like it's nothing, you know what I mean? Because he on shit and she on shit, so is nothing, right? It's more personal than anything else, right? But Chairwoman Park is like, no, I have money, I have influence, I have power, I could get rid of all that easy, Jets. No, don't fuck with me, right? And even like her motivations, even though like what she does is all sorts of fucked up, there's a strange kind of like logic to it all, right? And it has to do, slight spoiler, with her first husband who was deceased, right? And how she views her life and happiness and all that kind of stuff, right? So yes, this show really highlights just the darkness of these characters, though. But but because of how fully fleshed out they are, you can't help but watch them. You can't help but really be like, yeah, I get where you're coming from, even though I don't like what it is you're doing, right? There's few things for you. Cinematography, fantastic across the board. This is just a very, very well shot film, series, I should say. I love the visual motifs that pop up as well too, one of which involve ants. Like there's like a few shots where you see ants in a particular setting, right? Like in case in point, there's one shot of ants over, a plate of food, right? But like how I saw it, like how I interpreted it, is just basically, oh, look at this perfect portrait. Look at that. Look at how lovely it looks. And just this one little thing, and like a group of little things just pop up, and it distorts the image. It makes it look really creepy, and it sort of turns you off there. And that to me is kind of like the heart of the show. Is all these little things that are being revealed, all these little secrets, all these little tricks, and all these kind of little schemes and whatnot. And it just distort what could have been like, hey, look at this couple. Look at how great they are. They own this place. Look at how cool. Look at they are. They have money. Look at them, right? Or look at this young couple, and they have dreams of starting a family. Look at them. Look at how nice they are. But then when you dig deep into this, it was like, no, they are very fractured, very ugly characters, right? And I love how the show really touches on that too. Music choices, pretty cool as well. There's some 2010s, pop and EDM cuts as well too. At a point in time, I was wondering if it was set in 2010, in the early 2010s, but then a character mentions ChatGPT in a great moment, actually, too, because I'll say the character uses ChatGPT to pretend to be someone that he is not. I like that. That was really funny as well, too, right? Last season was Bobby Krillick, right? He did the score for Midsummer and stuff like that, right? Yeah, so in this case, they got Phineas O'Connell, who is, believe it or not, for those who don't know, the older brother of Billie Eilish. Because you actually do hear a couple of Billie Eilish songs. Like you hear the song that she did for Barbie. I was like, why is that song there, huh? And then they actually have him do a cameo. I was like, oh, okay. I see what they do there. They actually have a great, well, it's him and Oscar talking about, having a conversation. And you actually talk about, Billy showed up here, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff, right? Because, Phineas was playing himself, right? But yeah, I thought that the score he did here was pretty good, man. It's a very dark, very atmospheric, ambient, electronic score that he did here. It works. It absolutely works, yeah. So at the end of the day, even though I wish that I saw the first season, and if I did, I feel I would have enjoyed this season a lot more, right? So I could understand some people saying, this season was really all that, and I heard one person saying it's kind of reminiscent. This season was kind of reminiscent of the White Lotus, but I have never seen the White Lotus. I know people love the show, but I never watched it as yet.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
All right, I guess it's the setting of the country club and all the drama that so it's like that. I guess okay, all right, fine. But maybe if I watch you White Lotus, I could agree with you. Okay, fine, right? But I think that in terms of it being, its own entity, like telling its own story, while borrowing, the themes and the certain elements from the last season, right? I think that's what makes the show work, as well, right? So it being an anthology makes a lot of sense, right? You could tell new stories, right? And I think that just for me into the world of beef, yeah, this works, right? This was a great entry point for me, right? Again, I wish I saw the first season, right? Even though this isn't a perfect show, right? Because I would say there's some narrative bits that I wish they could have fleshed out even more. There's some moments that All right, like okay, so this is like 8 to 4 release show as well. So yeah, you have the artsy moments and whatnot, but there are a
Correct.
few artsy moments that I felt they could have just explained a little bit more. It was just there to be artsy, and also like I say, some character bits where it's like, yeah, why would you do that? Like it just sort of feels sort of out of character, right? Especially like what I see with Ashley, that moment with her in the car, right? I just felt like just character wise it's sort of out of place, but like the more I think about it, like, and given her character makeup is like, oh, I guess that's why she did, right? But outside of that, though, I really, really enjoyed the show, right? Even right down to the ending, that I know may split viewers. Like, okay, it's one of those. It didn't end the way you wanted to, but it ended the way it should. That's my agreement. I think it ended the way it needed to end. Like, it doesn't end on a
Agreed.
happy note at
Agreed.
all. But I
Yeah.
was like, that's how it needs
Agreed.
to end, right? That's how it needs to end.
Right.
But yeah,
I heard some people found it a little too cynical, but no, I didn't have a problem with that.
no, but the whole this whole show was, well, okay, this whole season was cynical AF too. So it's
Right.
like, yeah, you
Right.
kind of had to end like this anyway, right? But
Right.
it absolutely works, and again, it just touches so well on, yeah, again, human nature, transactions,
Right.
why I want, what I willing to give, what you giving me, all that kind of stuff, right? And I think that's why I just ended up enjoying the show so much, right? So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the season here. Even though it's imperfect, I really enjoyed it for what it was, right? And I expect with the third season, whenever it comes, that they will continue just telling these really dark stories about, yeah, what it means to be human, right? What it means to be fulfilled and all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, rating wise, strong 4 out of 5. This I could definitely see this showing up in my best of, or if not, it will be an honorable mention, by year's end, right? But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this to the point that, I am, I will make that effort to check out the first season, right? So yeah, I talked long enough about the second season. So as somebody who saw the first season, I guess you could start off by talking about why you love that first season so much, and then you could jump into this one, and you could give your thoughts on it, and then close off with rating. So yeah, Beef season 1. How do you still feel about it?
I remember really loving it. Thought it was great. Great bonks on back and forth. Simple story, but it escalates in really great ways. I know it gets some. One of the actors get into some trouble in real world. Somewhat related to what this character was. So it's a little close to home, if I remember correctly. But yeah, great stuff. I think his weight is AB Chow and Steven Yen.
Yeah,
So we gotta
yeah,
get him.
yeah.
Um,
We're gonna get to him with Invincible very
right.
soon. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's about it. I thought it was great, and I didn't know it was going to get season two. And season two is, well, here's the comparison. It's True Detective season two, right? Interesting, more mature in certain ways, but don't work anywhere near as well as the first season, right? That is how I feel about this. I think my only issue, here's my main thing. I think that, I noticed this when it started. I felt if they got somebody less popular than Oscar Isaac, it might have worked because it's a little too distracting that he was the guy, like the star, the main guy. And I was like, nah, they could I get somebody I don't know. Like I think that is why beef work. Because like I know Steven Yen, but I don't really know Steven Yen. Like I had to like look, at the time at least. Cause that was like a little before Invincible season one. Right after Walking Dead, I think. So it was he did his Minari, I think.
Minari,
That
yeah,
was
yeah.
it, right? It was, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
So it
you're right.
wasn't
I mean, Oscar is the biggest star here. Like every
one of the
time he
biggest
on
stars in the world,
screen,
right? Exactly.
he just like there's a halo over this guy, right? Like not even
Exactly.
not
One of
even
the
Kerry
biggest because he
Mulligan
has
is as
power.
popular
Because
as he is. Sorry,
right, that's the thing. And even like Kerry Mulligan, I could let slide. Like, I know she, but I don't know she, know she. No. Is that no?
true,
But
true.
I felt he was a little too big of a star for me. Like, so it was a little distracting. So that again, not a big deal, it's not a deal breaker, but like, you know, it's just it is something that you can't help but notice, right? He in Star Wars and Dune, stuff like that, right? Whatever. And then I say the plotting more mature. Like much like how I think True Detective season two is more mature, more grounded because it was basically like a Chinatown type of story. Whilst thing was like cult stuff, weird cult stuff. This was just a more grounded like conceit. This one same thing. This one not as petty and not as melodramatic as season one, and I felt that flowed so much better. This one was just like they played straight. It have a couple of funny moments, a couple of ridiculous moments, like the sorry, the last piece with Volvin, when he opened the door, that was kind of funny, right? And who come for him? Little stuff like that make it. But I find what makes Beef Season 1 so well is that it really blends the melodrama. No?
Okay,
It went back and forth really well and play the anti-dramedy thing, no? The Barry thing, which I'll get into with the drama, right? Yeah, that's it. I think I don't know. I was it just I don't feel it work as well. That's all I feel about it. It just didn't flow as well. They went for something different and it didn't work. And that's all I think. And again, the best comparison I have is True Detective season two. Like just remember how True Detective season two was compared to season one. Not bad, but different and but not as good. So is I don't know. It just didn't flow as well. And it's good characters, I like it, and it have a good bit of realism to it. But I think that is why. I think it's because they try to play it too straight and it didn't work for me.
Okay.
Whilst Beef season one is really weird melodrama stuff that just over the top and insane and escalates in really funny and strange ways.
All
This
right,
one didn't
I
really do that.
understand.
But it's still well written. I liked it. It's like it's not
Right.
like it's that bad, but it's still good. Like it's still fine. But because I compared it to season one, it's like all right, well, you know, if I went in as blind like you, like if I went in like you just went straight to season two, I'm like, oh, okay. I'd probably like it more. So is that I don't know.
Right, but
Yeah,
but before you get
if
to
you want,
rating,
if you want season one and you like this still, then all right, then I'll be, I'll probably I'll have to calibrate my thing. But I find this doesn't work anywhere near as much as for me that season one.
no,
Yeah,
well,
right.
like I say, I know I will enjoy the first season more, right? I know that for
Right.
sure, but I don't think like yeah, you know what I mean. Like I may look at this one after the fact and be like, this could have been better, but I was just looking at it as its own like singular story, right? Like it's part of the Beef universe, kind of, sorta, right?
Right.
But telling a similar, like just touching on similar matters, right? Involving again transactions, anger and all these kind of things, right? But yeah, before you get to rating, any thoughts on the characters, the story itself, stuff like that, the twists and turns?
Yeah, no, yeah. So like, I like the whole generational thing. They make that work. The how they use the videotape. I like that. That was clever. Yeah, it's solid stuff. And then the ending, as you say, is the ending that should happen. I don't know if it was more interesting. I don't know. Would the top of it work different for me? But I don't know. That's how I feel about it. So it's like rating. Like so, the original season one was like a 9 out of 10. This guy like a 7. Like I don't
Okay,
hate it,
okay.
but
Hmm.
yeah. So that.
All right. Well, okay. Well, note to self. I will, watch that first season, and maybe the show might be an honorable mention, but who knows? I could still put it in my top 10, right? I just let one time it will not be like a top 5 or anything like that, right?
Right.
Speaking of top 5 now, this season 4 of Invincible could make it. It could make
Right.
it there. I know, like especially with May coming up, right? May coming up. Yeah,
Right.
some bangers coming up, right? His boys is Dark Maul, it's
Right. Right.
Daredevil, it's all kind of things, right? So strapping, right? I am strapped in, right? But yeah, season 4, we covered the first 3 episodes here, so the final, or I should say, the full season is done, right? So we could get into we'll mention a few spoilers here or there, right? While we will not get into the premise yet again, we could just jump into the review here one time, right? So this was a great season. And this is a show that yes, like to me, I think that the momentum of the show has been very, very, very steady since season 1. So I am not
Right.
one of those people who will say that season 4 is better than 3 because 3 was kind of a letdown. It's
Right.
just that the momentum is going. The momentum is going,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it just
yeah.
keep
If
rising
it's
and rising.
anything was weakest, if it's anything was weakest season is probably 2. I find all the seasons good. Um, you
Yeah.
know, all of them good. Like I don't have any problem with any of them. So
Agreed. Yeah. So for me, right, just going back to what I said with the first 3 episodes, right, what I really dug about this season here as a whole is how it just touches on what eventually becomes Mark's PTSD, right? Because after
right,
what happened in the last 2 seasons, like listen, like I can't deal with this, right? And throughout this season, you really see it take a toll on him, right? Especially in that finale, which you'll get into in a bit, right?
right,
Um,
yeah,
and it's just where these characters are taken, right? So in particular, I would say like just the 4 characters who go through a lot, right? That will be Mark, of course, his girlfriend Eve, right? Which we'll touch on in a bit. Of course, Nolan, aka Omni-Man, we'll talk about him in a bit, and Debbie Boy, right? So we as a matter of fact, let's touch on Nolan and Debbie, right? So I was hating about the whole episode 5 thing. I think on IGN they give it a 10 out of 10, all that kind of stuff, right? So I just know just off of like little internet scroll off of social media that they was going to have the moment that I was waiting for since season 2, right? Where Debbie and Nolan confront each other and they have that talk. And it plays out, I would say, near perfect in my opinion, right? To me,
Right.
what holds it back, and this is not like a nitpick on the writers or the story, whatnot, right? All right. Well, I'll put it like this, right? I, this is like this works, but at the same time, I know for some people they'll be like, no, you shouldn't do this, right? But given the story and where they had to go, it had to happen, whether you like it or not, right? Yeah, Nolan apologizes, right? Having to apologize to
Right.
Mark again, to Oliver, which he does later on, but is him apologizing to Debbie, right? And yeah, I agree with a lot of people. It's like, dude, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that because she's not gonna listen to you. She's not gonna listen to
Right.
you, right? And just how that scene plays out works, right? But at the same time, it's so awkward because he is really, really trying here. And I love just like looking back at the second episode, right? And how you see the Viltrumite lifestyle culture. Yeah, where, he's about to enter adulthood and, his parents literally come to whoop his ass, right? Yeah, something like apologizing, Dread, you know what I mean? Even to their own peers, it's kind of hard for them to do, because it's all about being tough and, just having that hard exterior and interior, right? So for him to just be like, listen, I'm sorry, and nothing that I say or do gonna make up for what it is I do in season one, all that kind of stuff, it works, right? But at the same time, you just watch this, like, boy, you could have just not you should not have talked to her because she's not gonna listen to you, right? So I don't want to get too much into that, right? But yeah, that scene totally works. It's just what holds it back is just the decision in general that Nolan made, that he had to go out and apologize to her, right? But yes, it works, right? And especially Debbie's reaction to it all, it absolutely works too. Sandra Oh, just with them vocals, boy, wow, you felt that, right? And I really love that moment where when Nolan, was talking to Art, right? On top of the roof and all that kind of stuff, right?
That's a great
That's a
moment.
great
Where
bit,
you
right?
say,
Yeah.
I only make for
I
heroes to
only
run.
dress heroes. I only dress
Yeah, like
heroes.
brutal, Harold brutal.
That's a bar. That is a bar, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I just love how Art keep it short. Like, listen, like, I tired, I had to go out sleepless, so yeah, I go like I just saw one bit,
you
okay,
know,
cool, right? But it's how
you
it
know,
ends though, with him hyperventilating that I
yeah,
love that.
pretty
That's
lovely.
a perfect, punchline. I love that. I love that, right? Now last point I'll say, before you get to your thoughts on, Nolan's apology tour, right? Two things. So so at the end of episode 5, right? Yeah, boy. Mark has a incredibly brutal fight with Conquest, right?
Yeah,
And I
but
was hearing about this,
that
I was
was
hearing
bad.
about it, but
I did not have. The sad part is that the only thing that, unfortunately, a lot of like the beats were spoiled for me. But I didn't know this was a thing.
yeah, boy.
So that was like,
So yeah.
this was hard.
So I was hearing about how brutal the fight was, right? So I will just put it like this. This is the only spoiler I can give, right? Mark's guts got scooped out, Shred,
You know,
while he is choking
you
Conquest.
know.
Is like, you will never breathe again. While he is
Mark,
like this is the last line he tell Conquest, you will never breathe again. Eh?
yeah,
While
man.
he's trying to choke this man out, Conquest is scooping his guts out like,
Right,
fuck
you know.
me sideways. My
Yeah, this was hard.
God.
I think when they make complain, a lot of people complain about the kind of the consistency of the powers, like
Oh,
and to me,
good
it's a
point. Because in
no,
essence,
it's a semi-valid
Mark
critique, yeah,
should
because
have died. He should have died, But at the same time, it's like,
well,
well,
you're gonna say conquest cannot do more now with the powers because
okay,
once you see them your minds do the knife hand thing, that's it now. You can cut off his hands or something, I don't know, but like you could say one of the problems with Invincible is that Invincible kind of want to play it both ways. They want to do this ridiculous universe, but at the same time they want to make things consistent, kind of. But you can't really do that once you're doing like all these powers and you want to make all these allusions and to old comics and thing and a lot of things. So it'd be kind of hard to keep that consistency. So the big sticking point is more emotional reality, which is what works for the most part. Except at it, but they have a couple of moments where like what you would make, like what's the logical decision you would make in this, especially with the Cecil characters. And I think one thing that I had a big problem with, which is Conquest escaping. That was kind of dumb,
yeah, it
right?
was.
But what I
Like
thought,
when you think about it, like, cause he is in
yeah,
this prison and suddenly it's like, oh, I'm still alive. Okay, cool. Boom, boom, and the
no,
place explode. Like what?
what I thought is that they either A had some like good traps for Conquest, or they outright like cut off his head and keep his head alive alone, or something like that. But they're like, well, why didn't you just use the sound thing against him? And does work on Viltrumites? I'm not sure. Like, we
I
see
think
that work
so.
on
Yeah.
Mark. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it's that. However, it little contrived. Little small things like that is nitpicky. Not a big deal, not a true deal breaker, but it's kind of bother you a little bit, given because this character is supposed to be like defined by the whole I'm smart, I'm thinking 10 steps ahead kind of character. No? So it's like, well,
Right.
you're seriously how he still escaped from that. But that's about it.
Yeah.
But same thing with the powers, like characters forget to use their powers, and they will get to another character who is like one of my favorite characters. But like seriously, that Viltrumite needed to like team up on that motherfucker because he was like the worst for them, and it is like just kind of forget to do so. And that's the problem. Like we've seen characters doing this but not this, or like everybody complain about the ship, and you needed like 4 characters to lift up the ship. Like okay, but we see
Oh,
Nolan
okay.
like
Well,
we see
okay.
Nolan lift up a whole mountain though. So like I don't know, whatever. Nitpicks. I'm not sure
Right.
if it,
Yes.
but
Yes. Yeah. No. Omni-Man did do that in season 1. Yes, you're right.
right. And but that's the problem is that I'm not sure if I'm supposed to take Invincible as seriously in that sense. That's the problem. So we could go back and forth about that. Same thing with
Right.
the boys, right? You're doing that,
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, well,
Right.
moving
So,
on.
yeah, that's just last one. I want to just a couple more points, and then you'll get to your thoughts on the Nolan apology tour, right? So yes, right
Right.
right after what happened with Mark, right, and he's all this happened on this barren planet, right? So yeah, I really dug the moments where you saw Nolan and Oliver, right, bonding, right, there's actually a great
Right.
montage, right? I love the song
Yeah.
that's used in it as well, too, right? Yeah, so while Mark is healing, they actually like learn to because they're killing all these like random bugs, like these large bugs, and eating and learning about each other, right? So I love that montage. That was really cool, right? But the moment that really surprised me, but actually make a lot of sense, and this is right after what happened in the end of episode 7, where Oliver, is almost killed, right? Like I literally thought, oh
Right.
shit, this man dead, but it's like no, he's
Yeah.
he's being healed, right? In one of them,
Yeah.
in
Yeah. Right.
yeah, so he survived, right? Is Debbie basically because Nolan go back to to talk to Debbie right before he goes back out, right, to prepare for the potential Viltrumite attack. I'll talk about that in the end, right? Yeah, Debbie's saying, yeah, I gotta come with you. I wanna go and see Oliver. I know he's not my
Right.
son by blood, but I still raise him as a mother. I wanna go
Yeah.
and see
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
That
Exactly.
that actually surprised me, and it justifies that
Right.
moment with that conversation, because yeah, I know a lot of people have been like, yeah, Nolan, why you went by she for? She's not gonna listen to you, right? But I think that moment now is justified because of what happens afterwards, where he come back to pretty much see her one more time, and then she's like, oh well, Oliver is in this condition. I want to go and see him, and I
Right.
think that moment actually works. It really works.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're gonna be back together, like no, 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 no. But it shows that they could be growth, right? Following what happened in the end of season 1, right? So yeah, Ricardo, before you move on, yeah, your thoughts on the Nolan apology tour.
Yeah. I mean, they're making it work for what it is. Like they just like they somewhat justify why Nolan have to be like apologize or who he should apologize to, and they play with that reasonably well because like look, he's still a Viltrumite. He can like kill anybody at any time, kind of thing. I thought one of the best moments is not just the one with Art, but the one with the conversation with Cecil. I thought that was a good
Oh, I
conversation.
love that. Okay, so
Yeah.
2 points I want to mention with that, right? Is
Yeah.
the moment where he's standing up, right? Like I never expected to see you here. You're talking about Earth, or you're talking about this spot, and that is the spot from the end of season 1 where he pounds, Mark almost to death, right? And then there's a next, well, two
Right.
other bars this man drop, right? Where Cecil say, "Get the fuck off of my planet." I clap at that. I was like, "I fuck with that
Right.
line," right? And then
Yeah.
last point is like, listen, what is Nolan say? He says something like I made up for something, or I saved this person's life or something like that, right? And then Cecil say, well, you still have 2,341 people to make
Exactly.
up.
Right.
I was like, mic drop.
Exactly.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you forget
Nothing else to
you
say
forget
after
how
that.
much yeah, exactly how much is structured the fight backwards. Like
Yeah,
just
two,
how
three,
many people
four,
that train
one,
how many people that train are dead.
yeah, two,
the
three,
train
four,
train
one,
alone.
people you still
Yeah,
have makeup for it, though. It's like, were you telling me
you
about
know?
you save our life? Fuck that, eh? I love
Exactly.
that moment. That
And
was great.
they put it in that interesting moral space well now. Like I like what you're gonna make up for the nature of the Viltrumites. And unfortunately, sadly, I make the mistake of like having way too much of Invincible spoiled for me. So I kind of know what comment with respect to that. But I thought that was good stuff. It's really well executed. Well, we can get into a big debate about, well, a lot of people complain about this. This doesn't bother me too much. Well, there are people complain about the animation. Like, well, yeah, kind of, but I understand. And they said, well, they should have they should have get less cheaper actors, voice actors, so they don't spend more money on the budget. It's like, yeah, guys, that's not how that works. That's not
I
how
know, right?
these systems work. So we please don't do that. But yeah, this season overall is pretty good. And well, the main highlight of the season is Lipe as Stragger.
Yes, boy. Yes.
He live up to the hype. that
Yes, boy.
that actor is a badass. Oh my
Boy.
god.
And here's the thing, huh?
I didn't have any of that spoiled for me. Like
Right.
he totally live up to the hype because
And
when we finally get him, yeah,
yeah.
that was real hard.
Right, and here's the thing, right? So as I get to my next point, right? So touching on Trag, right? I love that in the first half, you just like seeing him there, right? You know, he just, looking threatening, all that kind of stuff. You know, this man is unfuckwittable, right?
Yeah,
And then the
right.
war is declared by the coalition of planets, right? So minor nitpick, but as you bring up the whole animation thing, I guess it kind of makes sense. Yeah, you don't really see the war, right? You just sort of hear, a certain planet, had to face off against a Viltrumite, blah, blah, right? I guess in terms of time and in terms of animation and budget, yes, you couldn't show me like an actual war, but I was a little let down that we didn't really see a war per se, right? Also, didn't pick up on the fact that, this thing occur over like a set of months, right? Because, yeah, Mark
Yeah.
healed in like about 2 months, I think it
Right,
was.
yeah.
And then
Right,
when,
yeah, right. So they changed.
oh,
I know they changed this. They
okay.
changed this because yeah, I think in the comic it was 10 months, but in this it was 2 months.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Yeah,
Right.
but yeah, we didn't get to see much war. To be fair, yeah.
Right, but when it came to Trag now, right? So there's a moment that actually episode 7, which you'll get to right now, right, where you see the early beginnings of him and Thaddeus, I think that's his name, right? Voiced by Peter Cullen, right? Yeah,
Right.
before he turned heel and betrayed them and
Oh,
before he
I
created
now
the
find out the guy who playing Argyle, he's
Emperor
Megatron.
Argyle.
Like, oh, okay.
Oh
Yeah,
shit,
yeah, yeah.
you serious?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's supposed to be Megatron. I think it's the voice.
Oh,
I
okay,
think
right,
so.
yeah. So Emperor Argyle actually is. You see him like he actually talks now in episode 7, right? So yeah, that
The
moment was really
flashback,
cool,
right?
right?
We get to see the flashback,
Yeah,
right?
the
Yeah.
flashback, right? But
But we
yeah.
get to see another flashback, a second flashback.
Oh,
Right.
yes, that's true. But yeah, my point is that
Yeah.
episode 7, this is where we really see like how big of a threat Trag is, right? Like he is that guy. Like if you try to butt him in the head, like just one blow, boom, and like you pass out. That's what Mark does. Mark like literally tried to headbutt him a couple of times, and he like passed out, right? But yeah,
Oh,
he's a straight up
yeah.
anime character. Though, like I think one character collect a bit slap,
Straight up Broly.
a bit slap,
Straight
blow.
up Broly.
Yeah. He's a DBZ character, like hands on, right?
Yeah, straight up Broly from DBZ. Like straight up Broly.
Yeah. But boy, that man, real dread. You see how big of a just how intimidated of a force he is, right? And that whole battle sequence in space in the second half, episode 7, was fantastic, right? But the moment that blew my mind, though, was the reference to Richard Donner's Superman. This is where Mark Nolan and Thaddeus, if I got the name wrong, forgive me, literally like dive down and borrow their way through the planet, Vitrium, the planet itself.
Mention that character because we had to talk about with the space racer.
Oh, Space Racer, yes. Who is voiced by
This
Winston Duke,
motherfucker.
though? Like what?
No, but this motherfucker, that laser is so dread, though.
I
And
know,
like, no, them he just wipe it out. Them he kill like 4 easy. Wipe it
one
out.
shot to the boom. That was it.
Fantastic. And I was like, oh, it's them filter, right? He said we run up on he ass boy. Like it had this one moment where it's like I thought he was dead. And then what do you call him? Alan rescue him. I was like, oh, they take it way too long, dude. Like, oh, they had to rush up on this man, boy. You're serious?
Yeah, boy, like okay, like they have the darts and they have the little alien thing from the planet, but look, you have the dude,
Right,
the
right,
man
right.
with the
Tech
gun,
Jacket,
dog.
right. Tech Jacket character is okay too. Like Tech Jacket was okay.
Okay,
Like,
okay.
Tech Jacket, I know they changed the gender of the character, but she was like the character was a boy in the comic.
Oh,
But the character didn't do much in the comic anyway. So it's not like it's a big change or anything like that.
all right. What I will say, minor spoiler, is that because she is introduced in episode 5, right? In literally the second half of the season, right? I wish that they just gave her this a little more character, like just flesh out the characters a little bit more, because she just sort of shows up. Okay, yes, they do the Iron Man thing. I do like the AI suit and how it
Right.
what was he
Yeah,
looking for?
it's with the Guyver.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
Guyver.
right. Yes. Even right down to the
Right.
to the helmet, it has a sort of a Guyver look to it, right?
Right.
Yeah, but I just wish like not saying that she should have been introduced in the first half, but yeah, they could have just give a little background into who she is. Why she father working at this this space station and monitoring
Right.
things,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, they could just give her this a little bit more backstory, right? But yeah, that moment though where the our three heroes borrow through the earth was straight up Richard Donner Superman. And how did this go literally through the earth, that planet's core, and come out on the other side, blew my fucking mind. I was like, that's what they kept back the budget money for. That's what they want. They want to
Yeah,
get that, because that looked fan freaking tastic. I was like, wow. I never would have thought that would have been a way for them to, at least win the war in a sense, right? Because yeah, I think in a lot of people's heads, right? Before you get to your thoughts on the seventh episode, right? Yeah, it would have been to fight the Viltrumites in space, right? Try to fight them. But it's like, no, while all this is going on, let me divert their attention for a bit now, and let's do it as we have to do, right? So before we get to the outcome of that, of what happened there, yeah, let me just close by saying that moment, though, is one of the greatest things I have seen in this show. Period. Like just them
yeah,
boring through that planet and coming out to the other side, though, blew my mind. That is on some Superman level kind of
yeah.
shit right there. I love that moment. But yeah, Ricardo, your thoughts on episode 7, Track just being, Broly from DBZ, and of course,
Right.
what happened with the planet.
So yeah, I'd want again a little bit of a nitpick. Again, I'm not sure how seriously am I supposed to take this show because like, why did he just stand up there and not doing anything? If he's such a badass now, he only get mad and he let the rest of the Viltrumites fight, and he only stand up there normal.
Because
But it's
he's
like this
Trag,
character.
he's like,
But that's the
hey, I
problem.
don't need.
That's the problem with the show. The show is supposed to be like, is it realism or tropes now?
Uh-huh.
Like it is kind of go back and forth on that now. Like if characters, if the big selling point is this is what people are supposed to do for real, he's supposed to jump in the fight since he was on the alien planet. Like why did he
Agreed.
just crash out there?
Mm.
And stuff like that. Whatever. It don't bother me too much. Like I suppose it had some better explanation, but the show I felt didn't explain it particularly clearly to me, or at least I missed it. I felt he could have jumped into the fight one time. It's only when Nolan attacked him directly, then he think. And I was like, well, is it that he really wanted to talk to Nolan to get him back? So he was waiting? I'm not sure. Is that? But he could have gang out with them and wash them out. Because he by himself washed out about 4 or 5 people.
Yeah.
Like, well, why did you jump in that fight earlier, bro? Whatever. But I dug it. I love the backstory with him when Argol died and what do you call him? This fellow
Oh gosh,
Thaddeus killed
Thaddeus,
Argol. Right. And then we get to see, well, this is before the virus. Because the virus sequence is pretty brutal too. That was pretty good.
Boy, yeah, that episode too, because
Yeah,
I rewatched it, boy. That
yeah,
that shit
yeah.
is the stuff that nightmares are made of, though. Especially that music that they play for it, boy. Oof, God, yeah.
Right. And so stuff like that. So that is about it. But yeah, it's a really good episode. He just kicks so much ass. He just like this is when Invincible just straight up just punch him and you man just tank it with a headshot, Dread. Like
Yes, boy.
man, why I say you hurt your fist on my head. I'm like, well, wood. Like this one, I really dread this. But yeah, it's that. Really, really fantastic stuff. They make it work. And then the finale. Finale is really good.
Yeah, we'll
What
get
they
to
do
the
with it.
finale now.
I had this spoiled for me. I knew where it was going. But they ended in a good place. Where they, well, effectively, with the way how it is at the end, yeah, Alan and Mark gonna be villains. Gonna be like villains to each other. Because now they at loggerheads. With the big reveal at the end. And what Alan had to do. It's like, all right, well, good. And then I knew what was going to happen. I had this spoiled for it, but it's still solid stuff. They make it work really, really funny. But yeah, good. I think it was a really good season. I really enjoyed it.
Right. Well, there's just a couple more scenes I want to talk about with episode 8, and then we'll wrap up, right? So for one thing, just to touch on Eve a bit, right? Yeah, her revealing, that she had an abortion, right? I love how it's built up early from early, where Mark was about to leave to go with Nolan to to assist the coalition of plans, right? And she had that moment where she could have told Mark that she was pregnant, right? So that's what caught me by surprise with months past, right?
Right.
So yeah, Mark and everybody, well, all of you is touched back down. Eve gets some curves though. I was like, oh, okay, right. But then in your head, you tell yourself, oh well, okay, maybe she had the child, right? But then she would make that reveal of the abortion, and
No, that's the thing. A lot of people say, well, the big sticking point was, well, it was unclear how much time passed between the thing because it was in the thing. It was 10 months, so she had the kid already, and he already come back. She had the kid, I think, if I remember correctly, from the comic. But that's in the comic, so they changed that. So that's like a big
okay.
change.
Okay. I didn't know that was the case. Okay. But yeah,
I think so. Like, somebody could correct me on this, but
right.
I think she either that or she lied about the pregnancy. I forget what happened, but like I had to rewatch it to clear up myself. However, the the algorithm on TikTok and they go tell me everything. So whatever.
Wow, I love that you can just go on TikTok just for spoilers. Like, hey, hey, a
Yeah,
spoiler,
that's the
fuck it.
problem. Right? Like,
Let me see what it is.
I don't want to spoil for me, but at the same time, I don't pay enough attention to Invincible to do
Just
otherwise.
scroll up, Dread. Dude, stop going to spoil. Anyway, I'm not gonna tell you how to live your life. If you love
Right,
spoilers, fine, right? Whatever, right? But
right,
yeah,
right. Not free.
that moment was so powerful, though, especially with Mark and his reaction to it, though.
Yeah,
Like Steven Yeun, though. That's the boy, the performance he gave in that. But I really, really felt it for him, right? And just that feeling, like, listen, like if I step away to try to save the world or do something, what gonna happen to my friends, what gonna happen to my family. And I love how, visually you see the whole PTSD stuff where everywhere he goes, he just always pictures like his loved ones being killed, right? Which leads to a great reveal where you actually see Trag though, and it's done
yeah,
so
for
well,
real.
right?
Yeah. That's a good moment. That's a good moment.
Yeah, done so well because just visually you're telling yourself, wait.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
this all in the says? Like, no. 'Cause the moment
right. Yeah, it's a real.
is the moment where he say how he became Grand Regent, right? I was like, nah, this is him. This is him, right? But there's a
Yes.
condition that he laid down that make a lot of sense. Like, listen, like you and your
Yeah.
father destroy my planet. So here's what we gonna do. Us and the other 36 Viltrumites, it's 37 in total, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, we gonna stay
Right.
on
Right.
Earth. We gonna we gonna incorporate ourselves in your world, right? And
Right.
listen, if you don't play, if you choose to come against us, we will wage war on knowledge, right? And whoever survive, well, it wouldn't be good for it. And I thought that was like a great reference to the beginning of the second season, where you saw that altered future where Mark and Nolan was running, the place now, and all these survivors were
Well, it was
subjugated,
also it
and that's
was
where
a
oh
parallel
gosh,
universe. Yeah.
Angstrom came from. Yeah, parallel
Yeah, that
universe.
was a parallel universe. A parallel universe. Right.
Okay, I said alternate future, but yeah, a parallel
No, no,
universe.
no.
Sorry,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
I thought that was a very subtle reference to that. Like, yeah, whoever survive
Yeah.
will be subjugated by us, and if you don't play with if you don't play by our rules, yeah, we're gonna kill you, like just like that, right? So, boy, that decision make a lot of sense. But I love how the show just visualizes how hard it was for him to make it, right down to the very end where the screen cuts to black and you hear he in heels. I love that. I love that because yeah,
Right.
like this emotionally dread. That was weighing down on Mark Dread, but he had to make that decision. So I am excited as all hell to see how that plays out in the next season, and in
Right.
particular, what you said there with Alan now. Him taking
Right.
Tad's place now. Yeah, and him realizing there's an updated version of the Scourge virus.
Right.
Use this to destroy every Viltrumite. I don't care if it's
Right.
Mark or if it is. Use it because you need to
Well,
be wiped out.
but the
That
thing
was
is,
a great
it's not
ending.
that what you mentioned is I don't think it'll just destroy it, but from what I understand it, he didn't want to use it because it's quite possible to destroy humans as well now.
Yes,
So,
yes.
like, yeah, the whole of Earth might be under threat because there could be a problem.
Yeah,
But like, yeah, he could kind of make the counterpoint of saying, well, any Viltrumite in existence is still a problem anyway. So it's like, and on top of that, they make it turn. So that's the whole thing,
exactly.
right? We
Yeah,
don't know. But
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
well,
that's
well,
about
well,
it.
well, well, last,
For that,
last, last point I want to make, right? So I know that. All right, so I'll exclude the whole mummy thing, because that was a comedy bit that I honestly thought fell flat. But given the nature of the show, I know that they will touch back on it, right? I just hope that they don't string it
right,
out like one particular moment. 'Cause they keep doing it. They keep stretching out this story of this mummy who is resurrected, and okay, he finds the host, and the host is the woman. That's a joke, okay. But I know they'll come
right,
back to that later on, right? But the one point I want to mention here before we wrap up is the bit with Damien Darkblood and him in hell, right? Big shout out to Bruce Campbell for playing Satan, though. I didn't know it was him until I saw
right.
the credits, and then I went back and watched the scene like, oh shit, that's Bruce though. Like what? You know what I mean? But yeah, I could understand some people calling that episode filler. I
A little
think
bit, yeah,
it is a little fillerish, right? But it's just
yeah,
kind of just there to capitalize on the whole metal worship. Like, okay, you play some rock songs,
right.
you play a Slayer song, and it's all the sort of like devil imagery and all that kind of stuff. But they make for a really entertaining episode, at least
And
in my
it
opinion.
was interesting. Some interesting world building as well. It's like, oh
Yes,
well, heaven doesn't exist, but hell exists, but there's no way you think it is, and they have a whole history, and they explain like, oh, this is why this creature is this and that, and so it's
yeah.
like, alright, it was fine.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
so stuff.
yeah. So I bring this up because of the ending now, where oh gosh, what's the name? Volcana. I think that's the name. Which I mean is such a invincible name. Eh? It's
Right.
so over the top
Yeah.
and ridiculous, but yet it feels like a name of a villain that would live in hell, right? Volcano, whatever her name is, right? Yeah, she want to rise to the surface and take over the world because of reasons, right? So I have a feeling that that this is not gonna be some throwaway subplot. That is something that's gonna play maybe a major role in the next season, right? Especially with the threat of what could happen with the Viltrumites and whatnot, right? So
Right,
I'll
right, right,
close
right.
this. I am excited as all hell to see what season 5 have to offer. Just off the way, just how this finale played out and ended. Yeah, I am excited as all hell, right? So yeah, strong season once again. I'm gonna give this a very light 4.5 out of 5. Way this show just keeps getting better and better and better. I don't know how long the show is gonna run for. I hear talk that they might go for 9 seasons, like not 9 more, but like they may
But
just go for 9 and then stop.
I know the comic is like the way how the pace of the comic is. Yeah, it's about that.
Okay. And I mean, like people loving this show, right? And Amazon, I guess making money off it, right? Making a lot of money off it,
Yeah, what
right?
the
So
reason yeah.
yeah, so I just hope that they just keep that momentum going, and yeah, out of it we could hopefully get one of the best TV shows ever made, not just animated and not just superhero, right? That I'll stop there. So Ricardo, your final thoughts and rating on season 4 of Invincible.
Yeah, strong season. Probably the best season so far. I think pound for pound. There's great arcs for everybody. They make it work. Good action. People complain about the animation, but that doesn't bother me as much as other people's fine. The world, the not the world, but the power scaling is the only thing that I could understand where people coming from with that, because like I'm not sure how serious I'm supposed to take this. Like yeah, it making fun of this, that, and the other, and fine, but like I feel like they feel like like make things a little consistent. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But I get where people coming from with that. And usually that is something that this usually bother me, but like I kind of soften on it. But like in this case, yeah, I probably had to like kind of buck up on that whole premise. But it's fine. Yeah, rating like close like an 8 out of 10. Solid stuff. They leave it on a great cliffhanger and a great like place. Like okay, this is a good moral position. They put characters whose allies could potentially be enemies now, and how they're gonna handle it logically and whatever. This is good to see. So it's solid stuff. I enjoy it.